Have you ever wondered what was the fastest muscle car of the entire 1960s? Get ready, because today we're diving into the 10 classic cars that destroyed the quarter mile and remain living legends among die-hard car enthusiasts. This isn't just a countdown, it's a tribute to the wildest V8 engines, the stories that shook drag strips, and the nostalgia that still connects us to an unforgettable era. Every model you'll see here didn't just make history. It sparked an obsession that still makes the hearts of true fans race today. If you love American classics, raw power, and little-known automotive stories, stick around till the end, because I guarantee at least one of these cars will surprise you. But before we hit the gas, do one simple thing. Give this video a like and subscribe right now. That way, you won't miss any of these rare gems, and you'll help us keep the muscle car passion alive. Ready to feel the adrenaline? Let's begin this ride through the undisputed kings of the quarter mile. 1969 AMC AMX 390. Did you know that in the late 60s, while all eyes were fixed on the Detroit giants like Ford, Chevrolet, and Dodge, a small but fierce manufacturer named AMC decided it was time to prove they could build a muscle car that could leave more than a few rivals in the dust? I want you to close your eyes for a second and picture the restrained roar of the AMX, a car that might not be the first to come to mind when you think of the fastest from that era, but it deserves a sacred place in American muscle history. The AMX was short, aggressive, and hiding beneath its hood was a 390 cubic inch V8 engine producing around 315 horsepower, a more than respectable number for its time. It launched so hard off the line that it could blast through the quarter mile in under 14 seconds, shocking anyone who judged it by its compact size. AMC specifically designed it with a shorter wheelbase than its sibling, the Javelin, aiming to create a car that was not only fast in a straight line, but also agile in the corners. A nearly revolutionary concept in the muscle car world, where most were highway cruisers, not corner carvers. Here's a fun fact that few people know. The AMX was one of the first American production cars since the original Ford Thunderbird to offer a two-seat configuration. That gave it the feeling of a European sports car, but with a bold American heart. Many owners at the time said it felt like driving a more affordable Corvette, but with a totally unique, untamed personality. Perhaps the most fascinating part of this story is that AMC, aware of its reputation as a modest manufacturer, used the AMX as a statement piece to change public perception. And it wasn't just marketing hype. In 1969, legendary land speed racer Craig Breedlove partnered with AMC and took an AMX to the track, where it broke over 100 endurance and speed records. Just imagine the impact. A car many considered secondary, going head-to-head with America's muscle elite and proving it absolutely belonged in the fight. 1967. Plymouth GTX. Picture this. You're standing on the edge of a drag strip somewhere in 1967. The sun is beating down on the asphalt. The crowd holds its breath, and suddenly you hear a roar so deep it rattles your bones. What you're staring at is the GTX with a Hemi engine, a true predator on wheels, built to prove that American muscle wasn't just about size, but about raw ambition and an untamed hunger for speed. Plymouth took its mid-size Belvedere platform and decided it could become something both more refined and more brutal. That's how the GTX was born, a car that combined upscale details like chrome trim and a more elegant interior with the ability to house the legendary 426 Hemi 5.8, an engine that had already dominated in NASCAR and was widely considered too wild for the streets. Officially rated at 425 horsepower, Rumors at the time claimed the real number was significantly higher. The result was a steel missile capable of ripping through the quarter mile in just 13 seconds, faster than many European sports cars that cost twice as much. The GTX didn't just run, it intimidated. With functional hood scoops and a bold Hemi badge up front, it was a rolling declaration of war against anyone who dared underestimate it. Hearing those 8 cylinders roar down a straightaway was enough to make your heart skip a beat. Here's a fun fact. The press nicknamed the Plymouth GTX the gentleman's muscle car because it delivered brute force without sacrificing comfort. While other muscle cars were bare bones and noisy, the GTX came with upgraded upholstery, a standard radio, and a surprisingly smooth ride, until you floored it and unleashed the beast. 1969, Pontiac GTO The Judge. Now imagine this. It's the late 60s, and American streets are filled with Chevelles, Roadrunners, and Mustangs roaring at every stoplight. Pontiac knew it had to create something that truly stood out. Not just fast, but impossible to ignore. That's how the Judge was born, a name inspired by a comedy sketch on TV that quickly became a symbol of rebellion, power, and unmistakable style. Under its long hood lay the legendary Ram Air 4 V8, officially rated at 370 horsepower, though just like many engines of the era, it was likely packing more than that. Torque delivery was brutal, throttle response was immediate, and flooring the pedal was so addictive that drivers swore they could never go back. On the quarter mile, the Judge clocked low 13s, which was remarkable given its size and weight. What made this GTO iconic wasn't just its speed, it was its attitude. Dressed in carousel red, a screaming orange hue that dared you to look away, with bold side stripes bearing the Judge name and a massive rear wing that was anything but subtle, this car wasn't about whispers. It was a full-on youth rebellion on wheels. Many say the Judge was the last great flag-bearer before emissions regulations and the oil crisis began to dim the fire of the muscle car era. That's why today, when one of these beasts shows up at an auction or classic car meet, it feels like seeing a living legend, a reminder of a time when freedom was measured in octane and quarter miles. Now I want you to close your eyes for a second and picture this. The Judge's keys in your pocket, a full tank, and an open highway just waiting for you. Feel that tingle in your skin? Yeah, me too. If you could pick any place in the world to hear this GTO roar for the first time, where would it be? Drop your answer in the comments. 1969, Dodge Charger RT. Picture this. You're standing in a Detroit garage in the late 60s, watching a handful of grease-stained proud mechanics bolt in one of the most feared engines in history under the hood of a Charger, the legendary 426 Hemi, officially rated at 425 horsepower. But those in the know would tell you the real number was dangerously close to 500. Nicknamed the Elephant Engine for its sheer size and brutality, this power plant turned an already intimidating car into a predator on wheels. The Charger RT, short for road track, paired that monstrous power with a reinforced chassis, upgraded suspension, and a touch of what now feels like vintage luxury. Vinyl bucket seats, sporty gauge clusters, and a design that blended elegance and aggression in a way few brands ever matched. At the drag strip, the Hemi-powered Charger could tear through the quarter mile in around 13 seconds, a jaw-dropping number considering its size and weight. The sound of its exhaust echoing through the American night was so distinct, so raw, that people swore it could rattle windows 2 blocks away. It's no wonder this car became an urban legend of sorts. If you owned one, you automatically earned the respect of anyone who understood real horsepower. One fascinating fact: the 426 Hemi wasn't originally built for the street. It was developed specifically for NASCAR racing. In fact, it was even banned for a time for being too much of an unfair advantage. The fact that Dodge had the audacity to drop such a beast into a production car shows just how far engineers were willing to push the rules in their quest for quarter-mile domination. 1967, Chevrolet Corvette L88. If there was ever a car that combined the elegance of a European sports car with the unapologetic brutality of American muscle, it was the Chevrolet Corvette L88. This wasn't just another Corvette, it was a beast in a refined coupe's clothing. A car built for the chosen few, hiding a secret under the hood that most wouldn't realize until it was too late. At first glance, the L88 could easily be mistaken for any other second-generation Corvette, with its sleek, seductive curves and signature side vents that looked like they were designed to charm anyone who laid eyes on it. But beneath that long, sharp hood lived the true reason this car became a legend, a 427 cubic inch V8 that Chevrolet officially rated at 430 horsepower, even though everyone knew the real number was well over 500. That underrating wasn't an accident. Chevy didn't want inexperienced buyers getting their hands on a car that, in the wrong hands, could be downright dangerous. The L88 wasn't made for cruising on Sunday afternoons. It was built for the track, for humiliating any rival that dared to line up at a stoplight or a drag strip. With massive Holley 4-barrel carburetors, a sky-high compression ratio, and a thirst for high-octane fuel that bordered on insatiable, this Corvette felt alive, like it was constantly straining to launch forward. When you floored the gas pedal, the roar from the exhaust wasn't just loud, it was savage, a sound so raw it was hard to believe it came from a street-legal machine. Here's a fascinating detail. Chevrolet kept L88 production extremely limited. In 1967, only 20 units were made, making it one of the rarest and most sought-after Corvettes ever built. Today, a genuine 67 L88 can fetch over $1 million at auction. Imagine that. A car that originally cost less than $6,000 now considered a rolling treasure that collectors obsess over. To give you an idea of just how extreme this model was, Chevrolet sold the L88 without a heater and with minimal interior comfort. They made it crystal clear. This Corvette was built for competition. If a customer wanted to drive it on the street, it was at their own risk. And what a risk it was. This machine could crush the quarter mile in just over 11 seconds, leaving nearly every other muscle car of its era in the dust. 1968, Plymouth Barracuda Hemi Dart 29. This wasn't just a muscle car, it was a missile with license plates, a machine built with a single mission in mind: to humiliate anyone who dared line up next to it at the quarter mile. Plymouth understood that if they wanted to compete head-to-head with the giants of the era, it wasn't enough to just have a powerful engine. They needed a car that could break stopwatches and defy logic. So they took the compact Barracuda and stripped it of anything that added weight. Plexiglass windows, ultralight seats, virtually zero sound insulation, everything non-essential was tossed out. What remained felt more like a dragster than a streetcar. At the heart of this beast thumped the legendary 426 Hemi 58, an engine that had already shaken up the NASCAR tracks and, when dropped into such a featherweight chassis, became a truly explosive combination. With an official rating of 425 horsepower, though everyone knew the real number was significantly higher, the Barracuda BO29 could run the quarter mile in around 10.7 seconds, a time that still commands massive respect today. Here's the catch. These cars weren't sold through regular dealerships. They were limited production machines built specifically for customers who wanted to compete in the superstock category. Fewer than 70 units were ever made, turning this Barracuda into a true collector's gem that still ignites passion over 50 years later. One fascinating detail is that Plymouth designed this car in parallel with its evil twin, the Dodge Dart Hemi L88. Both shared the same wild philosophy: be so extreme that the user manual literally warned it wasn't intended for street use. Just imagine the look on the face of anyone who mistook this for a regular Barracuda, only to find themselves wrestling an uncontrollable monster. Now, I want you to picture this. You're handed the keys to this Barracuda for just one day. Would you dare to push it to the limit, or would you lock it away like an untouchable treasure? Tell me in the comments what you would do and why this car still means so much after more than 5 decades. 1968 Dodge Dart Hemi L88. Some cars weren't built to please everyone. Certain models were created with such a clear and radical purpose, it's like they were developed in secret, away from the prying eyes of marketing departments. The L88 is, without a doubt, the ultimate example of that philosophy. A car that didn't even pretend to care about moderation. Dodge knew full well that in the world of drag racing, brute force was queen. But they also understood that no matter how much horsepower you had, a heavy car would always lose precious tenths. So they took a regular Dart and subjected it to the most extreme diet ever seen on a muscle car. Nearly every comfort feature was removed: carpet, standard seats, heating. Even the windows were replaced with sheets of plexiglass. The result? A final curb weight of around 3,000 pounds. Incredibly low for a car of that era. And into that ultra-light chassis, they dropped Chrysler's most feared and revered engine, the 426 Hemi 58, a piece of engineering so legendary it had already become the stuff of myth. Officially rated at 425 horsepower, but in reality closer to 500, this engine turned the L88 into a beast. In the right hands, a well-tuned Hemi Dart could run the quarter-mile in under 10 seconds, a feat that still impresses even compared to modern sports cars. Buying one of these Hemi Darts was almost like joining an underground club. You couldn't just walk into a dealership and get one. They were produced in small batches and delivered with a manual that explicitly discouraged street driving. These cars were so extreme that buyers had to sign waivers acknowledging they weren't meant for everyday use. One fun fact: from the factory, Hemi Darts came with hand-welded motor mounts, unfinished fiberglass hoods, and a giant Holley carburetor nearly the size of a 4-cylinder block. Every detail served a single purpose: to rocket off the starting line like a missile and leave the competition choking in a cloud of tire smoke and disbelief. 1964 Ford Thunderbolt. If there was ever a car that captured the wild, no-holds-barred spirit of 1960s drag racing, it was the Ford Thunderbolt. Picture this: the golden age of quarter-mile showdowns with every American automaker battling for supremacy. Deep inside Ford, a small group of rogue engineers set out to create something so radical it bordered on being street illegal straight from the factory. The idea was deceptively simple. Take a Fairlane, Ford's rather unassuming mid-size sedan, and turn it into a full-throttle quarter-mile assassin. To do that, they dropped in the monstrous 427 high-riser 58, an engine already infamous in NASCAR circles, with dual Holley 4-barrel carburetors and an intake setup that looked like it belonged on a fighter jet. The Thunderbolt officially produced over 425 horsepower, though insiders knew the real number was much higher. But power wasn't enough. Ford's team knew that weight kills performance, so they went on an extreme crash diet. The Thunderbolt featured a fiberglass hood and front bumper, plexiglass windows, barely any sound insulation, and even relocated the battery to the trunk for better traction. It was so stripped down that it didn't even come with windshield wipers. This was a car that didn't pretend to be anything other than a drag strip weapon. Only 100 units were built, just enough to satisfy the NHRA's minimum for superstock homologation. And when owners took delivery, they were warned this was not a daily driver. With vintage tires, the Thunderbolt could run the quarter mile in around 11.6 seconds, a time that would humble almost anything else on the road. Visually, it was a sleeper, until you caught the massive hood scoop and the makeshift cooling ducts. But the second you turned the key and heard that guttural roar, it was clear. This wasn't just another Fairlane. This was a beast in disguise. The Thunderbolt forever changed the landscape of muscle cars. It showed that limited-run factory drag races could exist and succeed. Its legacy? A blueprint for how to bend the rules and still walk away a champion. 1969 Chevrolet Camaro ZL1. This car's story begins with one man's bold vision. Fred Gibb, a Chevrolet dealer from Illinois who dared to dream bigger than the corporate playbook. He saw the potential of Chevrolet's all-aluminum ZL1 427 engine, originally designed for Can-Am racing, and convinced the company to install it in a batch of Camaros, using the secretive COPO program, Central Office Production Order, a backdoor way to order what wasn't supposed to exist. At first glance, the ZL1 Camaro looked like any other '69 model. But pop the hood and you'd find something extraordinary. A lightweight, purpose-built 427 big block made almost entirely of aluminum. It officially produced 430 horsepower, but in reality, over 500 with ease, especially when tuned properly. Thanks to that massive power and reduced weight, the ZL1 ripped through the quarter mile in the low 11 seconds, making it one of the most fearsome street-legal cars of its era. It didn't just outrun the competition, it embarrassed them. Here's the kicker. Only 69 units were ever produced. Why? The ZL1 was incredibly expensive, twice the price of a regular Camaro SS. Many dealers didn't know how to sell it. Some sat unsold on showroom floors until a brave soul took a chance. Today, these cars are Grail-tier collectibles, with auction prices that can reach into the millions. What made the ZL1 so legendary wasn't flashy looks or boulevard cruising appeal. It was built for one purpose: go fast. Every bolt, every pound shaved, every decision made was to chase raw, violent acceleration. Owners said driving it felt like grabbing lightning with your bare hands. Terrifying and exhilarating all at once. 1966 Shelby Cobra 427 Super Snake. This wasn't a car for the timid or for anyone satisfied with mediocrity. It was, quite literally, the embodiment of unhinged automotive insanity on four wheels. The story of this monster begins with Carroll Shelby, the man who had already turned the original Cobra into a racing legend. But apparently, that wasn't enough. One day, he decided his creation needed even more power, more savagery, more potential to terrify anyone who dared floor the gas pedal. That's how the idea was born to build two special units, real beasts powered by a supercharged 427 cubic inch V8, producing nearly 800 horsepower, a number that was completely absurd for the time and still sends chills down the spine today. One of the most fascinating details about the Super Snake is that Shelby built it with a single goal: to create the fastest street-legal car in the world. The result was so radical that one of the two units was sold to comedian Bill Cosby. As the story goes, Cosby tried driving it and was so traumatized by the experience, he returned it practically untouched. If a man used to living in the fast-paced world of entertainment couldn't handle it, imagine what it felt like to actually press that throttle. In a straight line, the Cobra 427 Super Snake was nothing short of a rolling missile. Its featherweight chassis, paired with outrageous horsepower, made it capable of shredding the quarter mile in times that still boggle the mind. For many, this car represents the ultimate expression of Carroll Shelby's unfiltered ambition, a man who simply didn't believe in the word enough. But it wasn't just about raw speed. The Cobra had unmistakable character. Its rounded, aggressive curves, those massive hood scoops, the side pipes that roared like thunder, every inch of it was a reminder that this was something rare, something irreproducible. In fact, one of the two original Super Snakes was lost forever in a shipping accident at sea, making the surviving car one of the most exclusive and priceless collector's items on the planet. The Super Snake was so extreme that few dared take it to an official quarter-mile clocking. But for context, a standard 427 Cobra non-supercharge could run the quarter in around 11.7 seconds on conventional tires. Although there's no universally accepted official time recorded by Shelby himself for the Super Snake, experts estimate it could easily break into the 10-second range and possibly even approach the 10-second flat mark, depending on traction and tire setup. And just like that, we come to the end of this journey, filled with noise, power, and pure American nostalgia. If you felt that tingle in your skin while learning about these legendary machines, then you already know. These classic muscle cars aren't just vehicles. They're a living part of our history and shared passion. Now, I want to hear from you. Which of these monsters would you love to have in your garage? Or which one do you think was the wildest quarter-mile machine of them all? Drop your answer down below in the comments. And if you're craving even more adrenaline, click right here to watch our video on the most beautiful American cars of the 1960s. I promise you'll be blown away by their design and stories. See you there, classic car lover.